Hey all, here OS Reviews. You're watching our video review of the Amazon Fire 7. This is the 7th generation budget Android tablet from Amazon, and it sells for only $30 in the holiday season and during Black Friday, making it one of the cheapest tablets you'll find on the market. Perhaps a good idea as a backup option or as a tablet for kids, the elderly, someone who doesn't need a cutting-edge flagship level device. So taking a closer look at the hardware first, the Fire 7 is constructed out of a polycarbonate plastic on the back, comes in a number of very vibrant looking colors, as well as a glass display on the front. Overall though, the construction quality is still better than the price would suggest, and the use of plastic does make the tablet feel more durable. On the back you'll find access to a 2 megapixel camera with autofocus, the Amazon logo, and there is a rear mounted speaker. On the side, you'll also find a microSD card to expand the built-in 8 gigs of storage. You'll definitely need that if you plan on watching a lot of media content that's pre-installed or apps. On the top, there's access to a microphone, which can be used to access Alexa instantly. That is one of the features of the 7th generation Fire tablet, is it comes built in with Alexa. There's also a micro USB port for charging, a power key, 3.5mm headphone jack, and a dedicated volume rocker. Then on the front, we have a 7-inch display, which is slightly below HD resolution, and at 7 inches, you can definitely tell a little bit of pixelation, but overall, it's still a good enough panel for the price. Now, it's not a laminated display, which means there is a gap between the glass and the LCD underneath, but it is an IPS screen, which means that viewing angles are actually pretty wide and generous. It is pretty easy to glare under the sun, however, because it is so glossy and reflective, so putting a screen protector that's matte could be a good choice. There's also access to a VGA quality camera for selfies and video chatting if you want to access it. So overall, hardware feels, again, better than the price would really suggest, and it looks pretty attractive and vibrant in the kind of iPhone 5C type of way. As a quick size comparison, here it is next to the Huawei MediaPad M5. Huawei is a 8.4-inch tablet. It's also a premium tablet that has a 2K display, so they're not really meant to be competitive here in terms of performance, but as far as size is concerned, you can tell that the 7 inches here is definitely more portable. With that being said, it also has larger bezels, so it will take up some extra space, but again, on a tablet, it's forgivable because it's easier to grip with your hands without obstructing parts of the screen. And here it is next to the Amazon Fire phone. Perhaps unsurprisingly, just like past Fire tablets, there is the presence of ads on this base model. This is a way for Amazon to make more revenue off of these tablets by selling you additional services, and they're able to subsidize the cost of the tablet because they're definitely not making a lot of money in terms of making the hardware alone for only $30. So unlocking things, the Fire OS experience should be very familiar to anyone who's used one of Amazon's devices like the Fire phone or a tablet of theirs in the past. It is very altered compared to stock Android, and it looks pretty unfamiliar at first, but it's still quite simple and easy to understand. You can't install widgets and pin them freely onto the home screens, but you can still install any of the regular Android APKs, so any regular Android app can be run and installed just fine. It's just the interface is altered. There are different tabs on the top, which you can sort through for recommended applications depending on your history, and over here we have a home, which includes all of your applications installed on the device. A number of Amazon services, of course, are pre-bundled, including Silk, which is Amazon's own web browser, supposedly faster and better optimized for low data connectivity. And there's also access to things like Audible, Amazon Video, Prime Video, Amazon Maps, Amazon Shopping, Amazon Photos, and of course Alexa. So it really ties you into Amazon's ecosystem. On the plus side, if you are already a Prime member, then these services can be very useful because now you can access all of those free movies and content from Prime directly on this tablet. But if you don't, it's a way to kind of convince you to get more subscribed to Amazon products. Trackdown notification tray is pretty familiar to regular Android, but the theme is a little different. We do not have a proximity light sensor, so the brightness of the screen is completely controlled by you. Overall, though, the screen does get plenty bright, as you can see here. Even when you are kind of pointing it outdoors in the sun, it still is fairly readable, which is nice to note. Wi-Fi reception also seems to be quite good, so there's no complaints there. There's also built-in Bluetooth if you want to connect to wireless speakers or headphones, and there's also a blue shade mode, which is basically a blue light filter. Since research has shown that blue light can affect your sleep quality, and this will help you fall asleep a little faster. What's the weather today?
In Sammamish, it's 41 degrees Fahrenheit with clear skies and sun. Today, you can look for mostly sunny weather, with a high of 42 degrees and a low of 26 degrees.
So essentially, it's just like Alexa on any other speaker or Echo product. So it works actually really well. You have this blue bar that pops up in the bottom when it tells you it's trying to recognize and record your voice. In terms of technical specifications, the device has a quad-core processor by MediaTek running at 1.3 gigahertz, and it also comes with 1 gig of built-in RAM. So these specifications aren't proudly advertised. In fact, they're kind of obscure and hidden away from the spec sheet. That is to say, it's not outstanding specs anymore for 2018. In fact, it was pretty similar specs to the previous versions of the Fire tablets that came out years prior. With that being said, Fire OS is very well optimized. So as you can see here, if you have just a few apps open, the entire UI still runs very smoothly. Moving to performance next, let's take a look at web browsing using Silk. Now, as you can see here, Amazon is again pushing their services very heavily because you can directly search in the browser, whether through the web, which is using Microsoft Bing instead of actually Google, which is interesting. But there's also a separate tab for searching Amazon directly just from the homepage of the browser. So you can always search the web, or you can search on Amazon for a product. Silk is actually doing a decent job. I'm not too sure if Silk has gotten that many updates since it was first introduced along the first generation of Fire tablets many years ago now, but it seems to still be quite optimized to run well on low-end hardware. That compression process is kind of similar to what Opera does with their browsers as well. Again, 1 or 2 tabs, it still does actually a pretty good job, as you can see here. And even the ads are slowly but surely loading along. Pinch to zoom also works pretty well here on this particular page. One of the limitations of Fire OS is, again, it's not closely integrated with Google services. So if you do use a lot of Google products like Gmail, Drive, etc., you do have to do a lot of installation on your own part, many which require installing the APKs yourself, since things like YouTube aren't built on in by default as a mobile app. Sure, you can visit YouTube from the Silk browser, but it's a bit more clunky, and my recommendation would definitely be installing the APK yourself. Is alright. It's a little bit tinny, not too much bass, but at least it gets quite loud. And of course, you can always use your own standard 3.5mm headphones, always a plus. Talk about the camera very quickly next. All I can say is that it's functional, but you really shouldn't have too high expectations for it. It will work in a pinch if you want to scan in some documents or capture something in emergency conditions. And again, it saves and uploads these to the cloud, so whenever you sign in with your Amazon account, it will just save that to your profile. And if you pick up another Amazon Fire tablet, or if you log into your account, you can still manage these things on a different product. There's also a basic maps built on in, which is designed by Amazon. It's not amazing, but it's functional and it loads back pages actually pretty quickly. As far as e-reading is concerned, it's great for comics, it's great for graphic novels, for animes, but not as great for just text because it's still an LCD screen at the end of the day, which isn't as comfortable as e-ink to read. So if you are doing only paperback reading, then a regular Kindle e-reader would be better. But for things like images, you can see that it works really well, and there's also a lot of optimization, like double tapping to full screen into different frames of a comic. So that's actually very well done. Otherwise, battery performance on this tablet is decent, but it's not outstanding. The capacity is still 5,000 milliamp hours. It still takes about 2 hours to completely charge using micro USB, and it'll definitely get you through an entire day, maybe 2 days, but the optimization in terms of sleep mode isn't the best. If you just turn on Wi-Fi and then turn off your display and leave it overnight on your desk, it can sometimes drop as much as 30 to 40% when you wake up in the morning. Gaming, again, it doesn't have a super powerful GPU on here, so I would recommend you to only load back 2D or very light titles, and it will do fine. For things like Stack, for things like Angry Birds, or some of these puzzle-based games, it takes a few seconds longer to open up the app for the first time, but once you are loaded, it will actually run fairly smoothly as long as you don't have too many of other apps open in the background. So if you aren't using these, I would recommend closing them out if you want the fastest experience when also gaming. And after more than about 30 minutes of use, the tablet does get slightly warm towards the top here with the Amazon logo. It never gets hot, but it's worth mentioning it does get slightly warm. So that's more or less it for our review of the Amazon Fire 7 7th generation model. Performance and hardware are both better than your money's worth. With that being said, again, some potential downsides would be, of course, it isn't a regular stock Android tablet, so if you are using a lot of Google services, it requires you to do a little bit of installation work yourself. Also, the screen is slightly below HD, just a touch, so you technically don't have the option to play back videos in HD resolution, for instance, if you install YouTube. So you are limited more to kind of 480p type of content. especially for kids as well as for use as a backup tablet. It's perfectly adequate. Just make sure you keep those expectations in line when picking this up, and I think that you'll be fairly satisfied with the number of different uses that you can set up for it. So you can check out more details in the links down below, but overall an excellent value, especially if you are a user of Amazon. That's been the Amazon Fire 7th generation model with a